Cheers, Gio and Cherie. How are you feeling?
Better, yes.
Oh, well, we're going to feel a lot better after this.
Cherie had surgery. I got into a car accident. I had to put my dog to sleep. All this negativity just hit us. But we have to get through it because I believe that the universe can't replace what is around you without first tearing everything down.
Well, as they say, you have to get rid of the old to get the new, and that's really what this whole time we're going through right now is about, is redoing the foundations and making sure when we build from here, we're building on solid foundations. We understand exactly what everything means. And I have just so much to deliver on this topic. Just let me know if you want me to just go right in on this, or you want to do a little preliminary, or what's up?
Well, absolutely. Let's jump right into it. Can you comment on? I'm a little confused. If you want to go right into the information that you have, or if you want to comment on the Colorado stuff.
Well, let me comment on that because it kind of connects with everything. I mean, of course, anything taking place in Colorado, people have to understand Colorado is positioned according to the mountain ranges. That's why there's a maximum security prison there. There's actually what will be called more or less a psychic dead zone, and this is why they put all of the major criminals like John Gotti and many of the different mobsters, and even Dr. Malachi York, individuals who have organizations where they have a lot of members, and they also are tapped into telepathic control to a certain degree. They put them in that prison because it's more of a vortex in that particular area. But as you see, if it's taking place in Aurora, they're attempting to do something with the auras. And the most important thing for humanity to do now, especially when it starts to face these doomsday situations where there's a large amount of negative information, is to understand what also is going on exactly during the times in which they're starting to push this information out. Like, if you remember, the zombie thing took place right during the Venus passage. Now we have this Colorado situation going on right around the time that the Olympics is about to launch. And for people who don't even know astronomy, you can really start learning astronomy by seeing what are like the power days, the days that a lot of this stuff is taking place, because we're going to talk about the show, what they're doing with the negative energy. I think that people really need to get to a level where they realize that this whole term, order out of chaos, has so much more to do with what that order really is, and how they're putting that order through. And it goes beyond just how the society is structured. It goes into things such as the Kaaba. It goes into...
Let me jump in real quick before we go too far off. You mentioned the zombies, and that's something that I also wanted to touch upon, because in one of the situations, or more than one situation, we've heard of weird chemicals just showing up. There was a weird chemical around the school that had the zombie attack. There was a weird chemical around Miami, and now they have this in the shooter's apartment. They found these bags of weird chemicals that they can't identify, and it could very well be the same type of chemicals that are potentially creating these zombie attacks. I'm just wondering if this is maybe a bioweapon that was released.
Well, they did already prove that they could put the bath salts, because of their potency, into the water supply, and it couldn't even be detected. So it's not something that someone can test you and see if you have bath salts in your system, or if you've been using what they call bath salts. So I think, again, you're dealing with the mass scare, because of course people knowing that they can put something into your water, and then all of a sudden from that point you don't really have a bearing at all on what's going on. I think it's very important for people to again just see the whole thing. And again, that's what we're going to have to talk about here, because of course this is going to be about the Olympics. This is going to be about Ubermensch, the idea of the superhuman. This is going to be about the place for the masses. This is also going to get people to see that really it's activate or else, meaning understand the real secret that's going on here, especially within your body and within your own powers, which are unlocked through certain techniques. But this is like all the wires, all the chips. It's like as things continue to build up, it should be for people to use this energy, because you can also see when stuff is happening that's very serious, it gets you serious. So it also becomes a time not to get desensitized because of it. Like, you're watching it and then you're like, okay, here's another situation. Now it was zombies. Notice how also there's a bending of the threshold. Like, we've never seen real zombies. We've never seen mass shootings with, people just really getting out of control until now in this recent 10, 15 years. So it's, of course, they're up in the ante on our sensitivity levels, because of course people will still watch that and go on with their day without really being able to do anything about it. So,
you're
so
absolutely right. I mean, I never imagined that we would see a zombie attack.
Yeah.
Never in my life. And here it is. But we do have the zombie powder that they've been experimenting with. They've even been experimenting with it at MD Anderson to try to create cancer zombie cells which eat each other. It's crazy. And they've been experimenting. Right. National Geographic in 2010. A professor from Miami, from the university in Miami, said that he was experimenting with a zombie virus. And then boom, 2 years later, here we are.
Exactly. You know what? I think it's just, again, time, Chris. Just taking a quick drink of water so I can get ready to really get in this, because this tonight, for those that are listening and the individuals that listen to the show in the future, they'll be impenetrable. When it comes to stuff like this, they'll know exactly what's going on. They'll be able to make the sense of it, but also what they'll be able to do more than anything is to assist others as they're trying to get what I just call as below explanation of what is going on. Because of course, why people are going through this, we're taking it one way because of course we are conspiracy theorists. Also, many of us are spiritually adept, so we can handle this information. We know how to flush it at the end of the day, and we know how to keep our energy going. But many people are bottlenecking with this situation that's going on in what I really call the root chakra of the world, which corresponds to hell, or Mars, in fact. And that's why most of what you see going on is martial law. You see, you basically just see the whole Martian war aspect to things. And so it's important for people to ask themselves the proper questions in order to get beyond this. Like, where does all this come from and what is all this about? And we have all the symbols. So if you allow me to, Chris, I could get right into this and start talking about a lot of the symbolism that's being used within all of this, like the Joker, like we just talked about Denver for a moment. But we can really start getting to the root of this, and that what that's going to do is it's also going to root up the problem, because people have to understand that they're doing something with this negative energy, and the more that they can get that mass accumulator of negative energy going on, the more they can continue to go into the past to change the future for us, because that's what's done with negative energy. Negative energy is used to travel to the past, while positive energy is used to travel to the future. Notice how if you have a lot of positive energy, you go to what is the future of your life, meaning you change, you expand. You're not in this circle in doing the same thing over and over again, or even in a vortex where things are getting worse and worse. So it's important to see that they unlock the technology that basically gives them the ability to harness this negative energy. And this is why all of the stadiums, all of the structures that you see where large amounts of people gather, are always configured in a certain geometric pattern, in a geometric way. Most of the time, Masons do build them. So when you get into, well, what is being done with the energy, when people are in the energy of conflict, which is, of course, games and sports, there's the all-famous ball going through the net. This is really us, the symbol of the ball or the sphere. So when you have these kind of symbols being shown and you have people cheering it on, what you really have is just basically generators of a certain kind of energy. And so now what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about what is this whole thing about? Like, why is humanity have this situation going on with these individuals that are on this planet now? And it seems to be so non-cohesive with what we're experiencing all as a whole, meaning that all as a whole, we seem to want to go into a beautiful future, while there's somewhat of another group, per se, holding us back. So we're going to, I guess, talk about that when we get back. I think you're going on break.
Quick break, but we'll be right back. We'll have a 30-minute segment after this, so we'll get real in-depth right on the other side, right here on Truth Frequency.
Awesome.
2010.com, his website, and we are going to get to the roots of the problem. We are going to get to the root chakra right now and find out what's going on with the 2012 Olympics. Why are these events happening in the strategically placed areas that they are happening in? And what can we possibly have in store? Seven, for the next 27 minutes a week. Take it away, please.
Okay, let's do this. All right, so oops, I'm getting a little reverb here. Okay, so yeah, because we weren't getting it before, but
okay, go ahead.
Okay, so what this is really about is okay. Let's talk about Let me see if I can just turn this down a little bit, just so I can't hear my own reverb, but I still can hear you. And then I'm just gonna go with this, and then I'm gonna watch it, so that way I got it on really low, but I'm sure that you'll probably hear me. So let me just go right into this, because I just always let everyone know we always get a lot of recordings of these shows. In fact, like, we're recording this one live on video, and we also have audio. So if we like break up during the call or something like that, we will have like clear copies available. And I know you, Chris, have an archive too. So just to let everyone know that. So here we go. What this is really about is this is about the power within the body. And the body is in fact the universe. So let's just start there so that everyone understands their position in this. Your position is as everything. All is self. Self is all. And the process that we're going through now is coming into the total realization of that. What each and every individual does, and when they come into that level of knowledge, is really based on their chronos, or their time clock, when it's time for them. And it just so happens that right now, for this sector of humanity, for this group of beings that are going into their complete, I guess you would call it, evolution or next process, we're all at the point where we're ready to make this major change. We're ready to basically go to the next level, whatever that is for us. And I always talk about that it's not just ascension in this whole thing. Like, a lot of people talk about ascension, but there's also descension. Because this is like a ladder, it goes up and down. So how this comes out in our reality is that we have this opportunity to go into higher states of thought. And then we have also this opportunity to go into the lower, deeper parts of our more primordial self. And then to bring that into our present. So whatever you choose to do, whether you're descending the ladder or ascending the ladder, as human beings, as vessels, or what we're called as gates, we have the ability to bring that energy into this environment. So this energy starts now with a group of individuals that is known more of as Thule. Many people are familiar with this: Madame Blavatsky, Hitler, the Nazis, Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons, JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the NASA, the Nazis. Exactly. So now let's talk about Vril, since people know a lot about that particular topic, but they miss the power in the entire thing. The power in the entire thing was Vril. Because according to, of course, Edward Bulwer-Lytton, he wrote a book talking about his visit to the center of the earth and his meeting with men that were using Vril as their power. And the device that they were using to weld the Vril was what's called a dorje, or a Vajra rod, which is known now in India. You can even find them on the internet. But what this was about is Vril is kundalini. And this is the thing that people just miss. They thought that Vril was, they didn't even know what they were really referring to, this power that can do many things. And these people that they had discovered. But they really wrote a story. What they discovered was the knowledge and the information behind how to activate your body. So now, when the body is activated, this becomes known as the term superhuman, or in German is Übermensch. So where we're at in the world now is we have superhumans here on the planet, meaning people who are fully activated. They know how to work their organic system. And they have mastered an energy that is allowing them to master over people who have no clue about this energy. And this is what it's going to come down to. I actually have a documentary that we're going to be launching. It's called Secret Energy. It's actually going to be at secretenergy.com. But we're going to be launching in a minute. And what it's about is about this secret within the energy of your body. And to tie all this in, it's important for you to know exactly where you are now. Like, what frequency have they put the dimension on? And for the masses, because they choose to be called that term and they choose to remain in that particular state, where that is known as Ma. Now, if you notice, the word mass contains the word Ma within it. And of course, you even have a whole group of individuals that call themselves Ma's sons. So who is Ma? Seeing that this is something that even a child is encouraged to probably say first. Sometimes a child says mama way before it says daddy. So what we've learned is that each of these words are very important because they have a vibration to them and they mean something, they correspond to something. And if you want to understand the energy that's coming across now and the mothers of that energy, then you have to look into Mars, you have to look into the moon, and you have to look into Mercury. These are, of course, the planets that start with M, and I just started calling this Club M. Because I started noticing these weird symbols and sigils that were being passed around by individuals such as Madonna. And even George Bush and individuals, they were always using this M. Even rappers, Rick Ross, Maybach Music. What was this M really about? And Kabbalistically, I started to look for the answers. Like, what do the ancient languages say that this has to do with? And they say what it has to do with is what we would see as horns. And this is why all of the symbolism that you're going to get now has everything to do with horned beings or horned gods. Now, as you'll notice, the story of the Nazis is that they, once launching the paranormal division, which was their major interest, they were looking to build a vehicle that could allow them to travel interdimensionally to Aldebaran. And the reason why they wanted to travel there is because those particular group of people did not know where they came from. Now, if you notice that many of the races here on Earth, they have indigenous cultures and pyramids and all sorts of stuff that tell stories beyond the stars. But for the people then, which, were gaining the title German, they didn't know where they were from. So they launched a heavy effort to find out where the origins of their race was. And they said they needed to look into the origins of the Aryan race. Of course, Aryan means one from the stars. Air is also an anagram for Airy, and Airy means basically in the sky. And so, or Arial, like our number one font. So what happens is that these individuals had already in their astronomical, an astronomical venture, all of this money put into the paranormal division, all this knowledge sequestered, much of it by force, found out that humanity, as far as its origins are concerned, are coming out of Taurus. So meaning coming out of the horns of the constellation Taurus, because we now know inside of Taurus is, of course, the seventh sister, the Pleiades. And so this, of course, is known as the womb center, the seven spectrum, the seven colors on the spectrum, the womb center of the beings that are generated into Earth. So they wanted to travel there. Now, in order for them to figure out who was the ones operating all of this, they went into a place then known as Semi-Aldebaran, which is now comes to us as Samaria. Now, if you notice about the Sumerian pantheism, which was brought forth definitely by the in many cases, the disinformant Zechariah Sitchin, all of the deities in the pantheism are actually horn gods. So let's again look at the symbolism. The symbolism of a crescent moon has always been known as synonymous as the symbol of a cow. And this is now where you start getting stories like, as a child, the cow jumps over the moon. Because in ancient times, first of all, the moon was known as a horn god, and it was male and female. And that's why within the lunar cults, there is a lot of homosexuality and things because they're gendered both ways. And so we're going to talk about multiple levels of this because we're going to talk about the physical moon, the spiritual moon, etc. So what's happening is you notice how there's one side of the moon that we can't see. They call it the dark side of the moon. What this part of the moon is to the Arabs or to the ancients was known as the female side, that she was veiled. And one of the biggest misinterpretations of the symbolism for us is that we don't realize that a female cow can have horns. If you go to Google and you type in, can a female cow have horns? It will respond yes. Many of the earlier species, also known as the bovid, the aurochs, and the urus, and these are very powerful names, especially when you're going through the etymology of the ancients, you'll find that the female cow can have horns. So seeing horns didn't always mean a male. In fact, in most cases, it meant a female. So when we look at Taurus, we can't imagine that Taurus is a male bull. It's actually a female cow. So we'll keep going forward here. Because notice there's also a Milky Way. Notice a mother has mammary glands. Notice the cow has everything to do with a mammal. On the dimension, they always talk about shepherding. They talk about the flesh, especially within Christianity and these religions, that the flesh, the beast, which only means just made out of flesh, an animal. So this gets you closer to the origins of this planet, or the beginning of the mass. And things are built from there. So where we're now at is we're at the apex of the creation. The humans are out of their elemental stages. The preliminary phases were elemental. We weren't even aware of our separateness then. The separateness that we feel now, we didn't even have thinking like that then. But as we've come to this point, we're at the apex because we're now a composite being. What a composite being is a being or a human that is made from several different animal parts, and they call this genes. But when you look deep into it, you'll find out that the only differentiations between how we look is based on the flora and fauna of the area that we grew up in, meaning the trees, what you ate. You eat Pepsi Cola. I even started watching how Pepsi Cola and different things were changing people anyway. You would see someone grow up indigenous, you would see their indigenous family members, but then you would see them growing up in the West and they look different. And it's because whatever your stock is, meaning whatever you're eating, it metamorphosizes you. So in the older days, the older races were primarily, their physical bodies were primarily the things that were in their area. So let me just give an example of that. Here in Costa Rica, there's a huge connection with what I call the gua, or the iguana. And you find this, even the word in Guanacaste, it means the iguana's castle. When you go into places like Guayabo, which is like the old indigenous places, you find that they were worshiping an iguana god. But when you really dig deep under it, you find out that when humanity is continuously evolving over these thousands of years, you're actually finding that they did encounter many beings that were part human, part animal still. Many of their traits had not been bred out. And if people think that people are domesticated out, and if people think this is odd and possibly not true, there are humans now still being born with tails. So if the human body was not some type of animal composite, then why would it even have a tail? So we get beyond that, though. We find out that the human body is a vessel. And what is inside of it is a spirit. So now already we have two different components. And this is also how people have to start analyzing everything they're seeing. They have to analyze it really from themselves more so than how the reality is presenting it. Because the root chakra reality, or Mars, is always going to be producing blood. The bloodsheds, as we're seeing now. The bull gods, let me show you how this works from another level to analyzing this. Whatever people are using as currency, let's say for instance you had a time machine yourself. You jump in this time machine and you go back to this particular point in time, but you want to know, well, what is everyone really doing? What are they worshiping? What is the big thing? You can look at their currency. Because even now, if someone just arrives in our sector, they show up in a spaceship and they grab one of our $1 bills, will they not get, if they understand how to interpret the symbolism properly, the whole story about what stage we're on? The pyramids, the eagles, the 13s, etc., right? So back in the day, if you showed up back then, guess what the currency was? Cows and bulls. How many cows and bulls you had determined if you got the wife you wanted, the house you wanted, everything. That was their currency. So it wasn't odd for especially these group of people to idolize the cow. And that became later on known as Moloch. In Hebrew, because many people know that Moloch is this horned god, but in Hebrew, Moloch means king or Cain. And his statue was always depicted with ovens. They said they used to throw the babies in the oven. But what those ovens were also used for is smeltering. They used to call him Tubal Cain, or Hephaestus. He taught them, their father taught them how to make swords and knives and plows, mainly the plow, to domesticate everything. Because remember, everything here wasn't even domesticated. So this is also known as the mark. The mark of Cain itself is the symbol of masonry. It's the inverted A's into each other. It's the symbol of an A itself turned upside down. It's actually a plow. It's the first sign of civilization. And that's why they say King Nimrod began the first civilization. And you see how King Nimrod connects right into Samaria. So I'm trying to get people to wake up to what has always been known. What I'm revealing to you is not a conspiracy. It's if you were in the Arab countries and you had already gone to the level of Sufi, if you were in the Eastern countries and you had already gone to the level of at least an initiate or even a lama, you would already know about this. So what's happening to especially the Western culture is we're caught under Welfin Shankri, or basically mind control, MK Ultra, altering of our personality. And this is why there is huge projects taking place to figure out how you can alter humanity's personality. And so the quote from one of these gentlemen that were working in this area of how to alter minds is, "Give me a child and I can make you any kind of man." I'll repeat that again. Give me a child and I can make you any kind of man. Because what these individuals figured out, especially first starting with animals such as the rat, then going into the more intelligent animals such as the monkey, then finally experimenting on babies, then finally experimenting on prisoners, and then finally humans, is this control of the matter. Because remember, because we're still spirits, but we're in this matter body, if we can't master it, then and someone else knows how to master over the matter, then we can get controlled. And this is where we're at. So now we're going to talk about how to get beyond that, because also what is known as the dormant energy that lies within the base of the spine, which is again Mars. It's a prison, for better lack of words, a prison planet. This dormant energy is known as the kundalini, or the vril force. There's many names for this, prana. That energy is what is necessary for us to become unconquered, meaning that all of this stuff you see in society is something that you know how to deal with and neutralize and you have the solutions for, but whether you're confined to it or not is not a part of your reality. You're not confined to it. So, let me check the time here. Okay, so we got about 7 more minutes. So what happens is that the Muladhara chakra, or Mars, has to do with the ages of 1 to 7. So between 1 to 7 years old within a child's life is where they experience most of the trauma that introduces them to the characters that later on play out in life, such as the Joker, the whole good and bad duality thing, like you spank the child, stop doing that. So now the child's learned that. The child left in the store alone is afraid, doesn't know where the parent is, doesn't trust anyone else around because is told stay away from strangers. This means to the child, you can't trust any other humans. So this happens to the child. So all this between 1 and 7, the child is basically introduced to the character that we know as the devil. This being is not external to us, but something that is constantly worked on through our lives. The reason why they introduce, and when I'm saying they, I'm talking about the negative controllers. The reason why they introduced the devil is because the devil became a large mass accumulator of negative energy. Meaning that every thought that a person sent to the horns, because of course they think of the devil as a horn god, they can grab and use because the devil is them. They know how to control the horns. So what is it that they're controlling? And this is maybe skipping through this a little bit, but this will make more sense to people if they're listening to this. What they're controlling is the moon. The moon controls all of the funkadillion and the fertilization on this planet. When the moon is full, whether people feel it or not, if they're too dense, then they may not feel it as strong, and the more subtle they become, the stronger they feel it. When the full moon comes, people go crazy. the universe or the earth goes crazy. Corals start to populate, fish start to populate, mainly fish, and that's why those symbols are used. So,
and not to mention the solar influence on human behavior and animal behavior as well. Whenever you see CMEs, especially large ones, you see stock markets just go completely ape crap, and then you see people just fighting with each other for no reason at all. More babies are born with the solar flares and with the moon cycles. It's very strange.
yeah, I mean, the astronomy, meaning the stars, are emitting basically the light program. But it's hacked at the moon. For those who like the hackers or hackers or hacktivists, the moon, it refracts off the moon before it gets to us. So in essence, the moon hacks it or uses it or changes it before it gets to us. Now, this is the ancient knowledge. I think David Icke was on it for a minute. He was talking about how the moon is artificial, it's a base, it's a ship. We don't need to really get into its organic and inorganic nature, because our planet has inorganics in it now too. It has computers. But these are also still atoms, so how inorganic is it really? But with the moon, what they knew is that the moon, these beings lived on the moon. Now let me show you how in spirituality this comes out, that the control center is the moon. The angel of the moon is Gabriel. In Christianity, Gabriel comes down and tells Mary that she's going to have Jesus. Okay, this is the first activity between the angel Gabriel, which is a real angel. Everyone is very well aware of this angel being the angel of the moon, talks to the people who are conducting now Christianity. The next religion, the angel Jibril, who's Gabriel, comes to Muhammad, chokes him up 3 times, and tells him basically to write this book, which later on becomes the Quran. So Angel Gabriel's there again. So then when you finally, if you understand the occult, you realize that all archangels are being called from the ark. What is the ark? The moon. Because that symbol of the crescent itself is an ark. That's what it means. So when they talk about archangels and when they talk about archbishops, what they're talking about is individuals who are aware of the ark. So what is also the ark used to do? Now, many people are already aware that the moon is very connected to, of course, like I just mentioned, Christianity. But Christianity is a ghost spell, meaning that there are ghost gods within the religion itself. It's not a monotheism at all. But look at the word monotheism. Mono is an anagram for the word moon. So a moon theism is basically, once again, the same energies that have always been hindering mankind, those that reside on the moon. This is also why, as far as how far a man was sent, according to the US, a man was sent no further than the moon. This is why in the past, because the name of the moon was sin, it comes out in Christianity is you should not sin. But that's all they're doing, because what it means is that you should not limit your activities to just lunar activities. Meaning that I'm just showing you a small part of what the moon has to do with the matter and the lower frequencies, etc. But when we say don't sin, this means that there's still planets so far out there. This would basically be a higher state of your consciousness. So instead of doing that, then it's basically, instead of doing the sinning with the moon, being limited to what the moon has, you can go beyond that. And so this is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about how to come out of dominion of the moon. So let's see what time we got here. We got about 3 minutes. Chris, do you have something to chime in on this? If you want to, because we got about 3 minutes before the break starts, before I get into maybe the second half of this, but I'm definitely going to lay this thing out. I got to get into Dianetics. I got to get into L. Ron Hubbard a little bit. I got to get into explaining to people that the same person that mentored L. Ron Hubbard also mentored Hitler. So I can show you how now these individuals are moving forward and why they have chosen this point to move forward with the total plan.
Who was that individual? Was it
Actually, let me actually get those notes for you here. I do have those notes open if you want to give me just a moment.
No, we'll get to it after the break. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm just fascinated with the information Sevan is laying type of individual that you have to listen to a few times in order to be able to absorb all of the information. But I think you're spot on with the moon analysis. And I'm just wondering, when David Icke hit on it, he said that the moon actually creates our reality, controls our reality, similar to the movie They Live. So we'll find out. We'll find out on the other side right here, ladies and gentlemen, with 7resistance2010.com.
Some people can't catch on sometimes.
People in the chat room are a little confused.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm following along pretty well, which is surprising because last time it was just like boom, 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 a million miles an hour. But we were talking about the moons and the organic and inorganic nature, the natural and unnatural nature of the moon. And Sevan brought up the question, well, even if we do have computers on this plane which bring a non-organic entity into this Earth, then how unnatural really is that? And I've contemplated that too. People say, oh, well, that's unnatural. This is unnatural. Well, if it was created by humans, and we are natural species on this planet, then how unnatural are the effects that we have on the planet? I think it's perfectly natural. So we'll go back to Sevan. Sevan, pick it back up, please.
Definitely, I would say it's natural because it's all an atom. Like plastic, it still has an atomic structure to it. But I think let's slow the ship down a little bit and let's make sure that everyone's on for this session of the quickening, because this can be explained in a very simple way. So let me explain it as ABCs. Now, here's something that everyone knows that my strong point is really etymology, and that's, of course, I wrote a book called The Code of the Matrix, and in that book I revealed just certain words that I just thought were odd, and then as I started to study things spiritually, I started to wonder why these words were in our language like this, especially when you're studying the vibrations and tones and what they mean. But notice how we have words such as weak, which is to us 7 days, but it also is to us a loss of energy. So why are we using the same word to denote when we go through 7 days or a time span? But of course, as we get older, we're getting weaker. And so I basically started noticing that there's this code in the words, and this is where this all began, me figuring out this whole thing, the whole circle. And so what the words will tell you now, when you look at the English language, it's called the alphabet. Notice it's not called the alpha zeta, meaning A to Z. It's called the alphabet, meaning A and B. Right. So I now got to the deeper knowledge about what that's about. Of course, A and B is very synonymous to 0 and 1. It's like just binary. And I began to see that with our language, what our language and many of the ancient languages are also doing. Remember, English is a language that was put together based on many of the ancient languages. It is an attempt to control even the vibrations of how we exist. Okay? So the letter A, if you look in Hebrew, is Aleph. And if you go and look and see, well, what does Aleph mean? It means the ox, the bull. Now, if you go into Arabic and you go to their first word, which is Aleph, it also means cattle. If you go to Futhark Rune, because a lot of people are like, well, those are really one language group. Okay, well, let's go to the other masters of knowledge, the ones that were using the runes. What does their first letter mean? Fehu, which is their first rune, means bulls. So this thing that I'm telling you about how a certain part of our history right now began is also written in the language, and it's written in the constellation. I've discovered fully. Go ahead.
Let me ask you really quick. What is the reason that they're using so many cow and bull symbols, even Taurus? Is it because of some type of origin of a civilization which came from somewhere in the constellation of Taurus, or is it just something 5 sense reality because bulls and cows are something that sustain us?
What it means is power of matter. Because if you notice, the bull carries the burden. The bull, even now, we plow fields with the bull. And the bull has muscles And the cows have muscles, and a lot of the mammals, the larger mammals, have a lot of muscle, or muscle I call it, because they pull a burden. And in fact, the horns are developed because of that burden. So even on a microcosmic level, if humanity are treated like bulls, basically if they're used to carry the burden all the time, then they develop horns, meaning they get ornery and angry, as like an Angus. And it develops a state of mind that actually keeps them where they are. They become...
I can't help but think of Zeus, who was guarded by a bull.
That bull is Jupiter. You see? So, and you look in the mythology and look in the rest of the places, they'll tell you the bull is Jupiter, because all the planets, because that's what the Sumerian gods were. They were synonymous with the planets, or archons. Those archons were bulls. So all the planets were known to be bulls. And this is why, what do you get in the Bible? It means two bulls. Those two bulls are Inky and Indo. Bi is two. Bull is, of course, the bulls, because they were worshiping Baal, which is also another name for bull.
Right.
They called him Abel, Ablebael. The worshippers of him ring bells, like at the Catholic Church, they ring the bell. And what is a bell? What makes a bell make its tone? It's arc. You see, so it also has a lot to do with vibrations and tones and shapes. Like, we have to escape that these people in our history were just like, just not just doing anything. They knew exactly what they were doing. And that's why, okay, so here was the command, because many people are confused about this whole story. They think that these beings created us. Okay, let me explain this. What was told to them in the constellation of Orion, that's why on Blade Runner the guy says, "I seen things that you've never seen. Attack ships off the shoulders of Orion." What he's talking about is, if you notice in Orion is standing there in front of Taurus with a club in his hand, like he's about to try to domesticate Taurus in the constellations. So what it's talking about was the command was given to them to go and prepare Earth for the gold. Basically, go and get Earth civilized. Because now we've arrived at the point where here with computers and cameras and all this stuff, and we're talking and we know languages and all this stuff. But before that, what was going on when Earth was just a ball of hot mass attempting to escape the cold vacuum of space? So what I'm also saying is that many of the entities that are inside of humans now, meaning that people who know how to evoke and invoke energies, are primordial energies that they have gone down the non-linear tube of themselves and brought forward into the present. Meaning that the body is the pentagram. It's known as the gate, or phi. And I won't skip too fast through this. If you hold your arms out and you open it up, it makes the symbol of a pentagram, but the geometry behind it is phi. Now, if you close the body up, you get the symbol of a cross. Notice how if you put your two legs together, you put your arms out, you don't get a balanced cross. Basically, you get the one like from Christianity, where the top is heavy. And it's because the cross from Christianity is actually the ancient symbol for the closed man or human. And so even when they say this close human being crucified on the tree, all the planets were looked at as also as trees. Because the fruits or the thoughts and the ideas and the lights that come from planets basically land onto the soil of places like Earth. The mass, the matter, the actual, the dirt itself, the materials, the minerals. So this star seeds, as people love to call it now, are basically fecundated here on Earth. That's also why many people are here. It's like, oh, why am I here? What am I doing? Where Earth is actually now is that we are so far along in the development, several of these matrices have gone through already running on AB, or just basically binary code. And let's get now back into that. Alphabet. Now B, because first, if the first letter means A, And the first letter A means bull, and so we've got onto that. And maybe some people say, well, maybe you can connect it. Now, let me explain to you this. Once you speak this language, any language that has this in it, the language was originally known as a cabal, meaning that the old term that used to be used for a language is cabal. And the reason why it was given that term is because the language is set up like a circle. The first letter of the language is supposed to connect to the last letter of the language, and thus make a circle or a disc. And then when the language is placed into the person's mind, i.e. the language is, they're instructed about the language, it flows in their mind like a wheel or a disc, and it gives them a program. You see what I mean? So language is, of course, a program. So what's programmed in the language is the ancient history of this planet in this particular constellation. The beginning of the male bull, then comes 2, B. So if we go again back to Hebrew, B is Bet, which to them means a house. And I won't even explain it now how that means a matrix, because they saw the womb of a cow or the womb of a female cow as a matrix. If you look into the Arabic, you get the word Ba. Ba is their next word. So what Ba means is, to them in Abjad, which is their version of the Kabbalah, what the letters and numbers mean, is impure dot. And now you start getting to the root of a lot of the anger and a lot of the hatred. Because Earth was looked at, especially to them as these group of people, Earth was looked at by these group of people as impure, a problem. And that's why, what are they circumambulating or marching around out there? It's called a Ka-Ba.
Hey, just hold that thought though, because you're breaking up a little bit, slightly back.
Okay. All right, so we were at the Kaaba. Should we keep going?
Take it away. We've got until the 27-minute mark.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so go ahead.
We're gonna skip that break and we'll just go straight to the top of the hour.
Don't want to waste any time.
45 minutes uninterrupted.
Okay, I just also ask people, just hang in there on this, and by the time we start rounding the end of this conversation, as it always works like that, it'll all start to click and make sense. But the main thing that people have to understand is that if they knew this already, then they would already have the solution to everything. So if you don't have the solution to everything, that means that there's something that you don't know. The only thing that is darkness to me is ignorance. And that's ignorance of self. It's like, so to expand self, to really come into the full realization of who you are, there's something deep that we now need to know. That's why they say you can't handle the truth. It's too deep for you. Most people like to stay in their thoughts. That's why Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. Also, Mercury is known as Thoth, which is where we get our word thought from. So, because when you think right now, where do you really feel the energy going the most? In your head. So, the head is not the root chakra. And because most people like to remain like in their heads, then they're basically failing in their lower areas. They're failing to ground themselves, because this area has everything to do with grounding. There's a positive and a negative side to every planet or every chakra. So I'm telling you now about the horn gods, but I'm also explaining to you about the power of nature, the forces of the strength that it took to till this planet to get you here now. So let's continue with so what they call it is the Kaaba, because Ka means spirit. Ba is the word that we were now on. In Arabic, the second letter of their language is Ba. And to them it means impure dot. And they say the reason why they're going around the Kaaba 7 times, which of course is they're still on the 7 system. The reason why they're going around this is the Kaaba has become black. And this is what they say, because of the sins of the world. So what they're really saying is a metaphor for the cube is the actual womb or world. And so let me get you to understand the symbolism. the symbolism, as I explained, the two A's interlocking into each other. When you do that, when you take an A from the top and then put another A on the bottom of it, like just like a mirrored A, and you try to push them together, you will make what is now people call the Star of David. Okay? This symbol in itself, also called, which has 6 points, it has everything to do with what we call sex. Now, the 6 or the sex is one triangle and another triangle. Generally a male and female, or positive and negative, a spirit or mass, coming together. Because now when they show you the symbol means that they're already together. So the key here is to see that anytime you put two opposing forces together, there's going to be conflict. But out of that conflict will come something. So we're also products of a conflict. That's why even in, and let me explain to you how this also works in symbolism. When a man gets together with a woman, even the whole action, the sexual nature, and the heavy level of pressing against one another is known as the conflict on this level. But if you want to see it on the major level, like how did it happen when Earth was a virgin planet? Remember, Earth at one point was a virgin. That the moon, who's known as Nanar Sin, also known as Min, that's M-I-N, you can check Wikipedia, and you'll see it's a phallic god. That's the main thing that you notice about the actual thing they give you is the horns on this being and the penis. And this is right on Wikipedia. Look up Min, M-I-N. This is where you get the word minute. This is also where you get the word that's supposed to mean who men are. So it would be important to know what to the oldest vibration did that mean. So now you'll also understand the deep secret, because we're only revealing deep secrets tonight, about menstruation. And why menstruation for women in most cases is connected to the moon. And this is because when the moon entered this planet, before the moon, there was no fertility. Earth was in another phase. And that's why the legend continues to go on that Marduk, because remember, I'm telling you, the moon and Mars are all connected. Marduk splits Tiamat. And this Tiamat, of course, is then known as the Earth. It's really Ma'at is the name. He splits Tiamat, just like what you can see in the sexual gesture. So, and then from this point, the civilization starts, meaning that they begin to civilize the planet. And the other half of it, because our planet Earth has already been split. If you drain all the water off the planet and look at it, you'll see that it's not completely round. Its other half is in the Milky Way. And it's known that the souls from this planet, the consistent reincarnations, come from the Milky Way. Now, again, the knowledge that I'm giving you is what these secret societies are holding, because there's two forces and they're both polarized, meaning both of them you need to stay away from. They're extremes. That's why they show their symbol as black and white, Jachin and Boaz. They're two poles. So who they are is what's known as the Luciferian forces, who are of fire. They practice explosion. That's why everything with Luciferian and Satanism is explosion. That's all that means. It's acting out with power rather than acting within with power. That's, of course, Saturn, the Sun, many of the S planets. So there's another force, though, known as the Jovian or water planets, such as Jupiter. And they seek to deluge all of the fiery spirits. Now, notice how Dynamo Jack, anyone who hasn't seen the video, go check it out. It's on YouTube. It's been up forever. Kundalini master, very modest man. You know he's not playing around. He can set things on fire with his hand. When he did that, that was the last time everyone saw him, because he was chastised by his how they work in their system. There's someone that's over them, and it visited him and told him never do this again, stay off camera, etc. But for that one moment, we see that a man can set things on fire with his right hand. So what do you think the beings were like before chemtrails, disactivation, ignorance, a half of a language that they're using now? And I guess I got to point that out later, that English is 26 letters, which would be 26 weeks. There are 52 weeks in an anu or annual or a perfect circle. So where's the other half of our language? This is the other part of why people are confused. They don't have the meaning to this English language. So what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with, I kind of lost my train of thought of only thinking about half of the language here, but maybe we could just grab an anchor point and just get into first understanding that our planet and who we are in this universe is indeed hyper intelligent. We are in that state when our system is flowing freely. Some people have now seen this movie. It's called I, My Pet Goat 2. It's completely rich with symbolism, but there's a symbolism that they show of a brain, and in the middle of the brain there's a lightning strike. And then next to that picture there's a draconian or a Draco, and what that stands for people. But what they're saying is that in the middle of your brain is an area called the corpus callosum. This area used to light up on humans, and that's why on the movie The Last Airbender, you see he's got that arrow in the middle of his head and it's lighting up on the last scene when he starts to do all these powers. It's because in that area for us is there are several neurological pathways that used to light up but now are burnt out. And what this is about is this is the duality and the conflict that exists within us. When we don't understand what's going on and we immediately go into the hate or negative frequency, we ground ourselves out, because ground has everything to do with negative, right? So when we ground ourselves out, we basically burn out. And so now, of course, we're on a planet with a lot of burned out humans. And this is why Dan Winter talks about the draconians cooking our DNA, meaning that getting us engaged in things that always take a lot of and pull a lot of energy to the point where people really don't have any more energy left. And this is also what I was explaining during the break to the people here in the studio with me now about why they keep having to get more crazier at what they show you. Like right now, if they say, oh, a little Sarah is missing from Idaho, people are like, no, children go missing all day, every day. They don't really care about that. But if you tell them someone threw a grenade in the bathroom and blew up 5 people in the mall up the street, then they're like, oh my goodness, that's something. So each time they keep needing to get more and more of a crazy story before they pay attention. This is called desensitization. And because everything about your chakra centers and the power within you is all about the subtle forces and understanding and feeling the subtle forces and energies, people are basically being locked out of their higher potential. Now, some people have gained higher potential. Let's talk about that too. That's why I was also explaining at the beginning of the conversation. There's ascending and descending. Because notice when they depict kundalini in the ancient teachings, it's supposed to flow. It's not just supposed to go up into the crown chakra and stay there. I'm telling you also, just to also connect with what I was saying earlier, that whether you're on the lowest chakra, if you're stuck in the lowest chakra or stuck in the highest chakra, you're exactly the same. Because those are the two opposite poles. You're either the fire or the water, constantly coming in conflict with each other. So what you have to learn to do is when you get a lot of knowledge and a lot of prestige, as they call it, which is associated with the higher chakras, you have to be able to come back into the lower chakras and distribute that to the entities and the individuals that live there so that they can begin to make their ascent and then do the same thing. This is how the entire system flows, because even the people that are supposedly on the top of this world, like the Queen of England, are trapped. She can't come out of the castle, really. She's stuck in the crown chakra. That's why they wear the crown. Now, here's the symbolism of a crown. Of course, for those who understand this, the crown is a symbol of horns. So you also see how, again, this connects with Christianity because Jesus was wearing the crown of thorns. Jesus' story comes from Horus. That's H-O-R, the beginning of the word horns. Horus is sitting in the lap of a mother, Hathor, who has horns, or Isis, who has horns. So it's the continuous archetype we're playing over and over again. Even the Statue of Liberty has rays or horns coming out of her head. So this is also why when you understand the symbolism, it gives you a heavy level of power because it gives you grounding. You'd be like, okay, no wonder why things are the way they are. And you cease to be the ground. Now, of course, what the controllers are attempting to do is make humanity the ground so that they can keep climbing the pyramid. This is why they're going to space. They're doing all this stuff. They're living in ultra modernized lifestyles, ultra informative lifestyles. They're doing all of this. It's happening. Many people say, oh, they're never going to get anything and never enjoy anything. It's about now. They're doing it now. And what they have everyone tapped into is the dreams. Now, let's talk about that. What is the dreams? People need to now ask the major question because they've been finding themselves doing all sorts of things in the dream. What the dream is basically our entertainment. Meaning that in the dream world, we can dream of what we'd rather be doing. Sometimes now we just don't even dream that anymore. But when we were younger, when we were kids, you had these dreams of magnificent things, right? So what happens is what happens if you get more caught up in your dreams than the physical reality? And which one is really real? And then I'm talking to a lot of now the deep seekers because they're deep into these dreams and deep into these planes, and they need to come out of the ethereal planes and come back into physicality because the physicality definitely needs the assistance and the arrivals of the balance for sure. Exactly. I call it the shipment because remember the only thing that's in 3D, Chris, is what we bought here from the Ark. Right. The Ark is really us. We bought it from inside of us. Like if you make a song and it's your song, you unpack that song from inside of you and bought it into 3D.
You know, it's funny you say that because that's exactly how I feel about my music. When I'm interviewed about my music, people ask, how do you come up with it? I don't know. It just comes out of the ether.
Exactly. And then you bring it into this world. And so this is like a birthing for you too. Like for those who don't think a man has a womb, this man bursts things into this 3D all the time, just like woman. So also if we look a little bit deeper into this, what we begin to realize is that when they're talking about spaceships showing up, they're talking, or cargo, which is also another word for the human body. What we're talking about is when you understand that on the outside is just what we bought here, but on the inside is everything. It's limitless. So when you choose to unpack, then your shipment will arrive. And this is why the first sign of the tarot card is the Fool. The Fool carries on his back the pack. He's got this pack on his back. And they say that in that pack is everything the Fool would ever need if he would just stop and unpack it. So they show you, but he's about to walk off a cliff. See, they already know how we run and how we work. But what if we don't know how we run and how we work? Because of all of these schisms that we've caused within ourselves. I can't read that. I can't listen to him. I think that he's wrong. Then all the brain is doing is shorting out. It never gets to its next thought because the person is already ordered, hey, stop that thought. And this is how, of course, Mercury or Thoth can also be depicted as a negative force. Some people even know when you're meditating, if you start thinking, you go down, your energy goes down. This is because any outlet in our body or hole secretes. Something comes out of it. So, of course, the primary hole for us, which is a man, we'll talk about the male, is, of course, the penis. What does the penis secrete? It secretes pee and semen. What does the ear secrete? Wax. What does the mouth secrete? Spit. What does the nose secrete? Mucus. What does the eye secrete? The eye stuff. So every part, and then what does our skin secrete? Sweat. So we're secreting all the time, but these fluids are all different. Surely semen is not like snot. So now you can also get a glimpse into what these other energies that have us tripping all the time, basically, are really eating. Because the fluid is only the as below picture of what is really coming out of us. Meaning water in our planet is the heaviest thing. Have you ever lifted a water bag? So some people look at water as light and it's light. And no, water is mass. It's the heaviest thing. It's actually another correspondence to the physical nature. But now if you notice with the water, we're getting now again to deeper parts, getting back to the moon. What it says in the ancient books is that the water here on this planet was not salinated. It was all fresh water. This is what it means basically to be virgin, is fresh water. But those who speak of the covenant, which is like all these Merovingian factions, the Knights of Malta, the Black Madonna, all of the Jews in Judaism, they talk about a covenant. What they're talking about is a marriage. Now, marriage has everything to do with Mars. It's a Martian tradition. A marriage between our planet and another planet. How this comes out to us in symbolism every day is they always show you in some of the movies, especially the Disney movies, how the princess has to end up marrying some guy that she doesn't even really want to be with. And he's even a horrible guy. And it's been decreed, though, that she must marry and wed to him. They're talking about the marriage of Earth, in many cases, the bride, as she's called, with many of these energies that are now basically acting out to through us every single day. So this is just as giving a somewhat of a glimpse into this. Hopefully people are catching on slightly or even fully in tune with this. But as I revealed, the first two letters, which are A and B, it's a male cow, then a female cow. But in this essence, to the individuals who understand what this knowledge really meant, they knew it meant a matrix. They knew just what Drumvalo had been talking about from the time that he got on air, which was they discovered that this particular matrix was made with the flower of life. But what is the flower of life? It's basically it's a hexagram with circles, right?
Right, so it's Merkaba, right?
Exactly, a Merkaba, exactly. So the Merkaba, they already showed us, the Merkaba is us. But see, because I already identified now, we have this physical body, right? And then we have this spiritual body. So it's obvious the spiritual body has more to do with the Merkaba. We've at least gone that far. But what is the geometry behind the physical body? It's the pentagram. So now you have a pentagram with a Merkaba with a pentagram inside. So this is why when you see them draw what's called a sigil, or when they draw these talismans and they put these symbols and they may draw a circle, then they draw a 6-pointed, then a 7-pointed, then an 8-pointed. What they're doing is they're drawing the geometry that's based on the planet, the energy of the planet that they're using. Now, let's talk a little bit about these chakras and what they really are. What the chakras are eyes or portals. That's why some people say the eyes are the gateway to the soul. They really are. As they show you on the tool video, Vicarious, and you know those guys know what's going on, even though they're definitely on the opposite side of things, anti-life. That's what I found out Ubermensch really meant at first. It means to overpower and to overcome without God. This is the individuals that are practicing now, and the Olympians, and they are attempting to go forward without our generative principle, basically. So what I'm seeing here now on Earth is, and I'm just going to switch up topics real quick a little bit here so that way we can get into some things that really apply to what people are experiencing today. Also, I really want to get into solutions to this situation, because now that I've identified to people that the problem is in the root chakra, what has happened is between the ages of 1 and 7, things have happened to you that you've never talked about again. And it's become trapped or bottlenecked inside of you. Then you've built on top of it. This is the other thing. As some people say, I moved on. Well, yeah, you moved on, but you built on top of that shaky foundation. So now you have to go back down there. And this is why people say, well, that's too deep, man. I don't want to talk about this. And that also is why it has always a lot to do with something that happened with sex, right? Like most people's deepest problems come from molestations and things of that nature. It always has something to do with a sexual nature. So thus,
Where it's stuck is the energy is stuck within the sexual part of the body. So this is also why the knowledge that we bring, you can look at it in the occult, you can look at it in your supermarket, you can look at it in the skies, you can look at it everywhere. It's universal. The controllers can't deviate from the plan or else the entire thing would evaporate. They only can continuously attempt to make it more real. And that's why each time around the tree, as they call it, like we're in a cycle, each time around is another reinforcement. It's not the same thing happening over and over again. It's each time it happens, you get more and more aware of what's really happening. So it's also important for us to see this as getting rings, because that's what rings are. You are a tree. You are in the original archetype or image, as they say, create in my image. So the image is the sapphire. It's a tree. You can bear fruit. So with your tree, you need rings, though. This shows you how long you've been here. On planet Earth, rings for us are symbols. Notice symbol. Symbols encodes. It gives us this knowledge that gives us the experience from the stars. Now, what we're unlocking now is I'm working on a project with some individuals that are scientists, brilliant individuals. They're bringing the cymatics or the sounds of the stars to us with the device they call the cymoscope. And what has been happening with this device is you can see the original language, because you can see the tone that every sound makes. And you can also test other languages and test your own speech and see what you're basically throwing out in the air. And so this becomes also, because we've been put under this kind of pressure, which is called the crucible. Mankind has been crucified. A crucible is to increase the strength of whatever is inside the crucible 1,000-fold. So what has happened to us is that we're inside this crucible and all this stuff is starting to happen. And we're now starting to look for the real answers. We're starting to say, well, wait a minute, maybe I missed something somewhere. Let me start somewhere else. And the best place to start is in the language, because it's what we speak. And that's the major thing that we need to know. Where the first veil started for us was within the language. And that's why, as I told you, there's two gods in the Bible. It's called Bible. There's two bull gods. There's a quote in there. Now, first, God says in the Bible, I don't confuse. He says confusion. I'm not really a part of that at all. But then it says, actually, I'm not the author of confusion, something of this nature. But then the next two books later, it says, let us go down and confuse them. This is how you know you're dealing with two different beings. It says an evil tree always bringeth forth evil fruit and can never bring forth any good fruit. Then later on it says, good and evil, I do both of these things. It says in Deuteronomy 5, curses anyone who hangeth upon a tree. Next Testament later, they hang someone on a tree and then everyone's worshiping him. So you see, there's a continuous thing showing that obviously there's more characters in this. And the reason why I bring up the Bible is because it is the major foundation for most people's spirituality. And because Islam and the Bible, especially the Old Testament, are synonymous with each other, this means that the foundation for the spirituality of this world is within these bulls or bowels. Now, where is the bowels in your body? If I say I'm about to go have a bowel movement, this is all about the root chakra. So now let me also explain to you what's happening. Because the root chakra is hot, it's a hearth. What it was used for is to basically all of what the top or higher part of the body or higher part of the universe is doing. The root chakra is responsible for basically burning it up and disposing of it properly so that it becomes fertilization for more life. So inside of your body, if your energy starts to bottleneck and you start to collect waste, your waste gets bigger. W-A-S-T-E, waste, the byproduct, waste, W-A-I-S-T, W-A-I-S-T, which is the waste around your waist. So when you start to accumulate waste, this means your root chakra is not working properly. It's not burning up all the byproduct from what the higher chakras are doing. Now, Let me explain to you also how you know that the human body as a mammal is connected with the primordial energy of the bull or the Taurus. What is the middle part of the body called, where all the organs and everything else that controls the body is? The torso. What is the actual field of implosion that they found out that creates the entire existence of us? A torsion field. So this is why you still find the bull there, but now scientists come to explain it in this other way. But the ancients knew it from the time of how things got started with the ones that visited them. So let's call it now, the term was Anunnaki. Anunnaki meant those who came from Anu, which is basically the moon, as I'm showing to you, to Ki. Ki was known as Earth. Inki meant inside of Earth. So if Earth, just even to take that point, if Earth then was named the Ki, what is the key to? Now we get a little bit deeper to what we really are. The key is known as, like, if you see your chakra, if you see your chakra on the astral plane, it has a specific shape to it. It's a wheel itself, or chronos, as they call it. It controls your time. Here's another thing, not to get off the subject, but it is the subject. Everything below the waist is animal or elemental energy. It has nothing to do with planets. Below the waist has nothing to do with the planets. I'll explain that again. The feet are known under the symbols of the snake, the dog, all the animalistic energies. You see dogs go into heat. That's why they call the god of the underworld is Anubis. Dogs go into heat themselves. They have many lots of symbolism that connects them to what is known as the inverted pentagram, or the upside down side of us. Samael, who is basically the angel of Mars. This is why, again, all the symbolism is replete with what's going on in society. So this lower half of ourselves, the inverted, as it's called, is all animal energies. It has nothing to do with time and chronos and any of that. None of these beings are aware of that. That's why you never want to get caught up with low energy beings. How this manifests in nature is, do you think the animals are sitting back thinking, I'm getting old. What am I going to wear tomorrow? I'm tired of this. Same old grass. They're not thinking about that. The thinking doesn't start until the head comes on. And this is why they were also in deeper knowledge. It shows how we were even created piece by piece. So, of course, rising up from the legs, this is why we start with the Muladhara chakra itself, because the Muladhara chakra was known to be the god of the underworld. Now, remember, if they're using terms like the god of the underworld, this means that this being is not in the underworld, or else it wouldn't be the god of it. What this is in the Muladhara chakra, which is also known as Ram or Ra. This is why there's pyramids on Earth that match with the ones on Mars, because Ra was traveling back and forth. What this is about is Ra was ruler of the underworld, or Ram was the name in the Hindu text, which Ram backwards is Mar, which is our Mars. So this being ruled over the underworld. So in your body, your root chakra area is supposed to keep your ground and your feet and all of that down there in check. Now, where generally is one of the weakest parts on people? Their legs. Even the weightlifters don't like to really work out on legs. This has everything. Then when you go to the East, you see their teachings, they practice a lot on the legs and the foundation. It's really hot in here. So it's building up a lot of kundalini in this little room. It's getting a little hot in here, but I'm just, again, trying to show people continuously how the symbolism is replete. Meaning that, as they say in the Constitution, the truth is self-evident. Meaning that the truth is clear. All you have to do is basically open your eyes and see yourself. Now, the chakras are in fact eyes. So many people wanted in this conversation to know, well, what happens when you die? Because we've already even answered that for those who find that as their last question. When you come out of the body, it's just very similar to a dream. In fact, every day you die, that's why I said the flesh dies daily. It goes to sleep daily. It goes into a frequency known as theta. And this is why the Scientologists call everyone that is not like them Thetans. They're in theta. They're in a deep sleep, in the deep ocean. So what happens is that those who are in the theta state are basically in a deep sleep. Now, I kind of lost my train of thought here just for a little bit on what exactly I was going to explain on that. Let me just catch up here to the information transmitted. Let me just, unwind myself for a moment here.
No worries. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break, because I think that we're going to need to go into a little bit of overtime so we can cover all the material that's here.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we will be right back with Seven of Resistance 2010. I'm going to ask you this: how does this tie in to the 2012 Olympics? And we've talked about the rings, we've talked about the Olympic rings. I guess we're inching our way towards that. But how does this all tie into what's going on now?
It's funny, everyone was saying that in the studio. It's like, okay, now it's time for you to explain to everyone how that ties into the Olympics.
Here we go.
So let's do that. So as you can see, the Olympic contains the rings. But first, I guess we would have to talk about who reinstated the Olympics. Because remember, the Olympics had discontinued. It was once a Roman or Martian tradition. Because remember, the Romans they said in their tradition that they've come from Mars, that they were suckled. For Romulus and Remus was the two that created the whole Martian or Roman colony. So when the Germans picked it back up, what it was about attempting to show the world that they were more superior, that their athletes were more superior. And that's why what you're looking for in this Olympics is to see what country actually wins the most medals. Because what the Olympians are basically the best of the matter, the best of what has been formulated from each country. And the Olympics is also coming in on another level because they've actually made a complete circle twice in bringing the Olympics back to London. Because the whole idea of the Olympics is that if they hosted the Olympics in your country, that meant that you had basically joined the United, as they call all the states that are called United. And even that's why in China there was a huge protest, because the Chinese they didn't feel like that their relationship with these Axis powers was that cool. So I would tell people now, I just want to mention something before we even completely decipher the Olympics, is that still remember that during World War II, where do you think that the people in Saudi Arabia and Baghdad and Iraq, what role did they play in that? Where were they? And most people say, well, I don't know. I guess I was so focused on all the other ones that were in conflict, I didn't notice. But what you're seeing is that Hitler and the Nazis were able to overthrow all the areas that they overthrew and eventually assimilated. But their last quail was with the Arabs, for better lack of words. And I use that word because it's Arab is R-Ab. R is the Sumerian symbol of the plow, also known as the pentagram. Ab means father. So Arab means the father of the one who first brought the pentagram. They say in the Terra papers that their father was confined to Mars after there was a wrestle on this planet, and that being lost the wrestle and even bit off the generative component of the other bull god, and was then confined to Mars. So they're telling you it in these ancient books, especially the ones that have resurfaced. So I wanted to bring that up because you have to understand that the Olympics is also a symbol of who is up to par. And this is also what's happening from people that synchronize with everything that's going on in the reality, or I call they're universally inclined. They also see that they're being, I won't even say tested anymore. Now it's about all the testing to see if it's really worked out for you, to see if you've really understood what the meaning of your whole path is about. It's like happening right now. Everything is testing to see how strong you are. Some people are having physical situations, some people are having mental situations, and some people have spiritual situations. So when I talk about Olympians, I'm talking about everyone else. In fact,
When I'm talking about any of this stuff, I'm talking about us. That's how you keep your power. Is you never let it go outside of you. You never let it say that, oh, until the Illuminati stop ruling over us. No, it's not up to the Illuminati to stop ruling over us for us to be in control of ourselves. So it's when we can fit in everything in what we're experiencing to allow it to benefit us. This is what the universe is. The universe, if a person says, I'm going to go to the major level, what is the major level? It's the universe. The universe has found a use for every single force that we have to deal with. So when we become universal, we'll find something to do with all of the stuff that we're being presented with, and it will serve and work for us. That's how it works. You manage your own body and your own system. So what they're going to do, because if you notice, the Olympics is on an island within an island. So it's the ancient schematic of Atlantis. In addition to that, everyone's seen the overviews. There's pyramids out there. The whole thing is configured to generate and pull energy. Of course, the Olympic grounds are on, I believe, I'm not sure the number, but thousands of tons of toxic waste in that area. And now the Olympic grounds has been erected on top of that. So as Sandra Barr, who's a member of the Resistance, also has her own website, pointed out that the channels in which this particular area sits on connects through the Thames River or the Thames River all the way into the ocean, and then thus the frequency of whatever takes place in the Olympics can vibrate through the waters of all places while the ceremonies are being conducted. So the future of humanity, you can see, this is why I had to build up most of this conversation, explain to you these different individuals, the horn gods, kundalini, the root chakra, etc., because we got to get back to real power. Because the Germans reinstated, of course, the Olympics so that they could show the world that they had unlocked Superhuman or Übermensch. Now, of course, unfortunately, the first Olympics, they did not dominate. And then there was an even bigger problem, which was why Operation COINTELPRO started, which was with many of the African American individuals dominating the Olympics. And that's why when the Black Power fist went up in the air at the Olympics during that time, that's when Operation COINTELPRO started to hinder basically the whole other competitor. Now remember, all these individuals are doing are attempting to eliminate every single competitor that they have. And I already told you, because of the Arabs basically stayed out of the war because no one could mess with them. They were dealing with jinn, they were dealing with all sorts of stuff. The original knowledge they already had. They had space knowledge, they had the Kaaba, they had all of that. So it took a long time for the aerial forces, which is under the symbol of a bird, sometimes a double-headed hawk or double-headed eagle, could get their air power superiority to attempt to defeat what they were calling the serpents. So I'll explain to you again. The eastern countries are looked at, or the southern countries especially, are looked at as the area of the beast. The east is the beast. So in animal encryption, what dominates over land animals is birds. So this is why they chose the symbols of the Aryan and chose to get into rocket propulsion and things in order to express their dominance over the planet. So now if you notice, there's a whole situation playing out in Egypt. See, what I'm saying is the Olympics is happening every time the Axis forces go out and attack all these countries and then dominate them. And they have the Olympics is their timeline to when their domination must be complete. And that's why, of course, in Syria, they're wiping out all of the cabinet members of those major parties so that they can really bring in their level of control or their overlords. And the reason is because we can't underestimate the spiritual power of the individuals that do call themselves leaders. It's because what really happens is that inside of those people they're tapped in. They're still the actual energies themselves, meaning that the people that are leaders around the world of tribes, shamans, chief leaders, they are real spiritual leaders of their people. And as long as their souls remain here, then there's always something for these forces to attempt to subdue. So what you're looking at in the Olympics is that they're going to bring now the Olympics to the UK, because the UK is basically like the movie Children of Men, where it's going to be the first state that they make a system to where you have to have your paperwork. You can check your paperwork from the signpost because it just pings off of the ID that's in your pocket. All of that they installed for the Olympics. And they also made an official statement that all the security that they installed for the Olympics to prevent terrorism, there's no need in taking it down, since they spent so much. They wouldn't want to waste all the money, seeing that there's the whole European currency crisis. So they're just going to leave it all up. So this means that after the Olympics, London will be officially weaponized. They've snuck it right underneath they've had another reason, just like you see they're limiting the weapons in the US because of the situation that happened in Colorado. They limited everything with the Homeland Security Act after the situation that hasn't happened in 9/11. It's the same thing. They create the situation, then they create the law in order to prevent the situation or people from doing something when they cause situations. So I'm telling you now, with all of this stuff that I just mentioned to everyone during this conversation, and of course there's a lot more to this, and you'll find a lot on the website. A lot of this has already been put together. I've kind of given everyone a lot of pieces to things, and some of it needs to be put together, but that information is there. But I'm telling you right now, this is not time for you to just think about the information and think, maybe that's something. The only people that will really be able to possibly reverse this situation, keep especially the innocent safe, are the activated individuals. A person cannot do anything about this with just protesting and stuff like that. They're dealing with a whole different kind of power. But that power is something that we all have, but it's very vivid. That's why a lot of people now with the New Age movement, they describe their power, it's so ethereal. It has no physical use, really. Like, I see something in the future, something's about to happen, and that doesn't help us. That's ethereal. We need physical people who are grounded in kundalini and activated, that will be instructed about the things that they need to do in order to allow humanity to process all of what is going on and take this as an experience that gets them to another level rather than a premature birth. Because what our planet is still an egg itself, an eye, an iris, as they call it. It has to birth. And I always said, even out of the conflict of the six or the sex comes this child, and they call it the seven. But the child is very confused. This is how you get all the stories about the child that is birthed off of conflict. And the child is very confused. This is the children that live on earth. Many of them are birthed from unions that have been almost like a rape. And people don't understand that archetype exists on earth. If you look in Liberia, there are women that have been raped and they have babies. And so now those children will grow up. But that has happened on a larger level before. And so this is also where many of us are going to be moving in to right the wrongs, as they call it, to correct the wrongs of the ancestral fathers that's keeping this generation stuck in an Olympic, in basically a circle, dealing with the same thing all the time and being the grain. As I say, you can either be the millstone, meaning the big stone that turns around, or you could be the grain. That's the thing on the bottom that's getting crushed. You have an opportunity now to assess all the knowledge based on everything you've heard from everyone. We got wise individuals. You got Santos Bonacci, you got David Icke, you got Michael Tsarian, you got pretty much everyone has run their course. Lennon Honor, Freeman I heard was on. You got all these individuals showing you a different perspective of you. Like I said, all is still self. Chris and Cherie been doing their thing for a long time. All of us. Now here's the thing. When I look into the face of a human being, I only see myself. Because our eyes are the same. And if you understand anything about all this geometry and what I explained is, when you start finding similar geometry, especially with the eyes, because the eyes is what causes your shape. When you come into this planet through the portal, the shape makes you look like you are now. That's how we all get along. If something comes here that is completely out of the normal shape of phi, it is like a monster to us. We don't recognize it. So within each other, when I look into a person's eyes, I see my eyes. But here's another deeper thing. You don't see people walking around with no heads. What I'm saying is that we all have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. So just from that level, the universe doesn't see us as different. So we definitely can't see each other as different. You have to see each person as another part of yourself at a certain stage, and that allows you to be able to move in and work on them rather than judging them and criticizing them.
Right.
And which is what's really happening, but it's happening to the controllers. Like they're the ultimate, they're like the scapegoat themselves. Now, all of this really, this major part of the awakening for me, with this particular part of the awakening, because you know I've been going through multiple stages of awakening, was with me descending again, meaning coming down and bringing the knowledge from that I've accumulated up there down to the lower levels to allow it to fertilize. I came around, and that's why I see every time you come around, you're stronger and stronger, because when I came back down on the root chakra, I noticed there was more things going on than I had explained last time. And I was also able to free up a lot of the pain and a lot of the things that were stuck in my root chakra. Now, there's also another brute force way of doing this, which is cleansing, doing colon cleansing, and moving the mucoid plaque from the intestinal area so that you can vibrate higher again. So that way you start the fire, because the fire is started with the vibration, just like 2 sticks rubbing together. How is fire generated? 2 sticks rubbing together, taking a stone and smashing it against another stone and creating a spark, or putting 2 opposing chemicals together until they cause an explosion. That's the way, that lets you know the nature of fire. Thus you know the nature of father, as they say. So what you have to do is the vibratory frequency of your root chakra area allows you to free up all of the other areas. It gives you basically a new chance at this, a real chance. Now, obviously, like what is highly explained to people now, obviously, for us to have ideas like everyone will be going into the higher state of consciousness is something that we need to work for. It's not something that we should just automatically assume. I have a theory on this that will allow people to be a little bit more easier in their mind about what is taking place with humanity, especially in this 2012 year. The energy itself, especially kundalini, when one person gets it, when they touch another individual, they get it too, generally, even if they haven't been through any of the prior experiences. Now, this could have a positive and negative effect, or negative effect on the individual, depending upon whether their chakra system is open. And this is what I believe is the ultimate awakening for the planet. I believe it has a lot to do with astronomy. It has a lot to do with this lineup, because there will be like a straight beam coming into the planet. So thus inside of you, because you are a planet, there will come a lineup where the energy will attempt to make its complete ascension through your chakra center. And if you have allowed these idiots, the horn gods, the ones that they are going to be here because they manage this kingdom. If you notice in Hindu text, it says they like it here. They've made it to be comfortable to them. So if you let them get you stuck here, when the energy opens up, it's just going to bottleneck. And of course, the lady that revealed the information about the 3 days of darkness or whatever, they have different perspectives on what can happen to a person when they bottleneck their energy. Like if a large energy force or a wave hits the planet, and then we can feel it definitely, what will it really do to us? If your energy flows freely, it will take you into states of higher realization of self. If your energy is blocked, I've seen people in Kundalini Awakening, or heard of people in Kundalini Awakening that have blocked areas even catch on fire. It's because it is a fiery force. It's a lot to do with fire and electricity. So it's actually a vivid force. And that's why the Nazis, Hitler, etc., were so interested in real power or Kundalini power, because they knew it would unlock the hidden potential within the humanity. But they sought to be not only the first to achieve it on a massive scale for their race, but also to use it to master over others. So some will ask, have they accomplished that? And this will be, I guess, the end of the conversation. Have they accomplished doing that? To a certain degree, yes. They now do have psychic soldiers, psychic spies, Ubermensch, individuals who use their consciousness and tap into others' dream fields, cause a similar situation to like a blue beam, to where they have a major experience and a vision. These kind of things. The humans are being used against other humans. They didn't need to find any special equipment. They just needed to train a human to work in the dark areas, but still unlock these powers. And so I told you there's a positive and a negative side to every chakra. So it is possible for a person to open the negative side of their chakra and be able to mismanage it. Now, it's hidden also within the word ma. We uncovered in the language, if you ever see a word that you can pronounce backwards, the difference between the two was they're both the same, but the difference is one is external and the other one is external. So if I say ma backwards, it's is the tone of the beginning of the world. They already told people that, but it's internal, obviously. It has to do with the womb. Ma is the material, as they call it, the material girl. It's the external world. It's all the resources that are needed to create an environment like we have now. Go ahead.
Madonna, like Madonna and all of these other, you call your mother mom. You start off with mama. That's like people's first words.
Exactly. It's the core vibration. And whether that's being passed to them like a monarch, butterfly passes the genes and the knowledge to its children, is yet to be seen. But lotus monarch, moon arc, somehow there's a connection. But when you understand the geometry, you understand the history of Earth with the truth that they say you can't handle, it all starts to fit together. And then you start realizing that it empowers you. You start to realize, okay, this is really why I'm always dealing with certain situations. And now here's another thing. Each person that's born, because they're born in a different part of the universe, that's what astrology is, they have strengths and weaknesses because of the levels of minerals or elements that are in the constellation in which they sprang forth from. Meaning that, notice how some people are Sagittarius, some are Scorpios, etc. But certain zodiac signs, some have respiratory problems, some have problems with their liver. And this is because the part of the constellation they come from is lacking in certain elements that other constellations have that actually don't have that weakness. So what this means is until you realize that you're everything, you'll always have weakness. Thus, you won't have scales or skills. It's the same word in Kabbalah. School is even the same word. Because what scales give you, or schools and skills, it gives you a level of protection. When you're not vulnerable, when you have something that you can actually do, like a real skill, it keeps you protected from the vulnerabilities and the dependencies on lower chakra centers. So this is also why we have to work on educating ourselves properly. Now, I want to say this to close this whole Olympic thing up, because this is what you got coming, and this is what you have to be aware of. The Dianetics movement, who's under L. Ron Hubbard, well, L. Ron Hubbard's now dead, but Tom Cruise is running things. The Dianetics movement is going to be the ones ushering in this major problem with humanity, which is basically another version of Christianity. Another version of a religion in which man is worshipped as God, but yet the idea of man is very low. Man is depicted dead on a tree, basically, and that's the symbol used to worship. The symbol is a sword. That's the other thing about a cross in a human body, is it's a sword. It can be used for conflict, and this is why humans are often used for conflict. And the pentagram, as you look in Chinese, are basically the combustion of all the elements: fire versus wood versus water versus etc. So what happens is that you have a movement, though, that is moving on humanity. And as I said, they had some things to settle before they got around to humanity. And this is going to buy you a little bit of time to figure out how you're going to activate the superhuman inside of you to be able to deal with these forces. They're already gathering themselves together. Now, who they're attacking is the Arabs, because I'm not saying that they're any better with the oppressive religion of Islam and the rest of what's going over there in the controls of the desert. But what I'm saying is that is their last opponent, and that's how they had to wait. And that's why they had to wait until they can get superior air power to go into those areas and start causing mass mayhem. which is what they're doing now. So just recently, something has gone underneath the eye of the entire esoteric community, because there's a lot of racism even in the esoteric community right now. And that's the Dianetics individuals who are under the Church of Scientology have basically assimilated the Nation of Islam. And this is a major move, because this is basically what will be called the right and left wing coming together. Because, of course, anyone who knows the foundation of the Nation of Islam knows that they don't even like white people. They believe that originally the white person was the devil. And then you have Dianetics, and you even have recordings of L. Ron Hubbard making racial slurs against Negroes. So these are the two poles, but now they're in the bed together. Farrakhan, who's the leader of the Nation of Islam, just recently went under what's called auditing. And this is how now, this is the new ethnic cleansing. What auditing from Scientology is done with a device they have called an e-meter. And what they do is they read an individual to basically determine if they have any spirits that still remain in them that were spirits from the old times that caused us to do bad things. Now notice, I'm telling you, to get rid of your problems, you need to understand all of history and its primordial roles. If someone tells you we can make you forget all your problems, then you're going to forget who you are. Your problems are a part of who you are. If you forget them, then you have to experience them again in order for you to learn of what to do again. So that forgetting is not the way of dealing with something. It's not responsible. So what these individuals teach is they teach a way of how to remove from your mind things that have caused you problems. And then what this is supposed to do is make you smile and happy. This is what they tell everyone. But it costs $100,000 to achieve the highest level of the OTO training within Scientology. So what you're dealing with here is you're actually going to be dealing with, and this is now the Mormons, this is the Melchizedeks, this is the Christians, this is all these organizations that have a common origin, which is an extraterrestrial origin, are going to come together underneath the title of this Scientology. Now, what I mean by, and I'm going to try to compress this again, I know I only have a couple minutes left, but what I mean by that have an extraterrestrial origin is the commonality between Dianetics and Scientology and the Nation of Islam is the same story. In the Nation of Islam, they say that the mothership brought basically black people here to Earth, and that the mothership will eventually return and thus basically emancipate us from the situation. That's what it says. In Dianetics, or in go ahead.
And let me chime in for just a second. In the Bible, in Revelations, it also talks about the New Jerusalem.
Exactly.
And the dimensions of the New Jerusalem made out of gold.
Exactly.
To me.
And on top of that, they put the diameters at about a mile wide. And one gentleman brought up that what kind of anything that's going to help everyone is only a mile wide. So it sounds amazing in the book, but after a while you realize, wait a minute, some people are not going to fit. But of course that's what they say in the Bible, that everyone won't be getting into that ship that contains 144,000. And of course we have to go into another episode to show the mathematics of the environment, basically how they keep the environment under control by never letting it get out of 12 bits. Which 12 times 12, of course, which would equal a cube, is 144. And this is the same way a computer moves. A computer 4, 8, 16, 32, 256. The way the numbers hop, for better lack of words, determine what geometry is behind the device. And so you'll see Saturnalian devices. You'll see Venusian devices. You'll see Martian devices. And that's why, the reason why you're going to see all of this is because someone unpacked it. This is what humanity has to understand. There are things that solve problems like this that some people need to unpack. And that's what this conversation is really about. I'm talking to certain individuals that understand this, and it speaks to them on another level, and then they can bring out the solution to this, because of course Taurus is not the only place in the constellation. Of course our universe is not the only universe. So for us to solve this solution, we're going to have to just bring in more parts. I think that only certain people are being heard right now. And like to get on the radio and to get a website and to do all that takes a lot of skill and ability and a lot of time. Many individuals that are tapped in with energies and techniques of how to unlock those energies that are organic don't Google and don't go on Facebook. So there's this bridge building also that needs to happen with individuals knowing people that actually have the knowledge that we're missing just as far as the masses and getting the masses educated. So that way we can basically move these controllers into quarantine so that they can do some healing, get them in their place. As I say, keep negativity grounded. That's where it belongs. Don't let it come up into the positive side of your body, which is your mind. Play a game with yourself and see how long you can keep the mind from thinking something negative, and see it as separate. That's how you train yourself. You can put your mind on punishment. You're too negative. Don't talk to me anymore today. You're a microcosmic being, so you have multiple in you. But again, what they call the magus, which begins, of course, with Ma, is the individual that understands how to control Ma. Control your primordial beginning forces. And this is what I'll say in conclusion. Until humanity sees these beings as their training process, and seeing these primordial gods, like the horn gods, as nothing more than the nature and the forces of nature, and that's as their description, then they have a long way to go. Now, but this can shorten the time. The labyrinth, as they call it, the maze, is the pentagram. This is what the ancient books say. It's the endless knot. It's a circle, 360 degrees. 72 times 5 is 360. 360 degrees, a perfect circle. That's called the labyrinth or a maze. What's in the middle of the maze? A minotaur. What is a minotaur? It's a horned man. So you see, the primordial nature of us is still stuck in the base of us. And that's why I say you have to conquer it. Notice the symbol of Mithras. It's Mithras wrestling a bull. That bull is the beast. That beast is within us. But it can be used to carry the load. It was known as the ark or the chariot. And I think that probably concludes even a big cycle of my education, because when I wrote the Code of the Matrix, for some reason the name came to me, Ark Chariot. Later on I realized that it's a vehicle itself. We're all just vehicles for the knowledge. And we are just responsible for transporting it properly. And when we do that and we fulfill that, this thing is going to continue to metamorphosize anyway. There will always be factions that continuously expand. If you want to expand with them and get on their frequency, all you have to do is work with yourself. You don't got to go anywhere. It's a magnetic thing. The reason why the earth is known as Magdalena, is because it's an iron core. An iron core is a magnet. It's pulling things in, and we call that gravity. So how did you get to earth? Attraction. Captivation. It happens with the eyes. You see a beautiful light or a beautiful person, you look them in the eyes. Immediately you've now gone into their soul. On the astral plane, that could be a long time. And so what's happened to a lot of people is they've entered into earth, they were captivated originally by its beauty and by the possibilities. And now they've forgotten that there was even a relationship and that they even basically loved to be here. So this is how we take earth back as the heart chakra. Because remember, earth is an anagram for the word heart. But earth is not the heart chakra. Venus is the heart chakra. Venus is also the symbol of a heart. You know, the actual symbol that we draw on the board is a heart, like I love you. That's a voodoo vive. That's the symbol of Venus. It's a love spell. And so I guess, again, you got to have me back on the show and I can explain the love spell between Venus and Earth. And of course, the story of the Nephilim, the story of the fallen angels, the one who's were looking from the moon down onto Earth at the women that were here. We'll talk about parthenogenesis, which is how women can basically create themselves. It's known within many of the species. This is the story of the Amazon. You get the original woman, the Amazon. She's giant women. A lot of people always talk about the Nephilim, the giant men, but we're a race that brings forth women and men. So were there giant women on this planet? Of course there were. And this is what the ancient books talk about. And this is, of course, why all religions, especially the current ones, when you start talking about the sexual nature of anything, it's taboo. So
Right.
that's all I got to say.
Bravo. Absolutely amazing show, Sevan. We really appreciate your time this evening. What are your websites? Where can people get more information?
To get us, they can either go to www.resistance2010.com. If they have a trouble remembering that, they can catch us on astroquest.com. There's, of course, a lot of things that we've sourced as resources. We have one of the largest esoteric libraries on the internet that's viewable and downloadable. And there's just a lot of tools. We get together pretty much every day, and we do different subjects. We have groups on the website, so you can kind of go there and see all of that. And of course, I have my own show that I do, which I got to have you guys come on, because I'm always looking for people to come on. In fact, it's most of the time just me on there and the crickets. But I have my own show, of course, the 2012 show. It comes on every other Sunday. And I think I was going to run, I was going to ask you about it, but I was probably going to run this tomorrow as a pre-recording on the show, just so everyone can kind of get quickened with the information. But, it's just an amazing time for all of us. And I would just say that the major part of this is us figuring out this stuff, and then we figure out ourselves. It causes a major activation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have the archive up in a couple of hours. So
Archive.
Yeah, absolutely. Run it, definitely. And we want to get you back on in a couple of weeks for sure, so we can pick the conversation back up.
Okay. All right, Chris and Cherie. I don't know if she got a chance to take off to sleep, but of course, it's a little bit later on in the night here too. But man, I had an excellent time being on the show. I want to say thanks so much for hosting the message and bridging it, shipping it to everyone. As I say, it's like a shipment. It has to go through you to get to them, so you shipped it to them. So I want to say thanks for that, and also all the callers, the guests, etc.
Well, thank you to you, definitely, because the show wouldn't be anything without the great guests, and of course, all of the great listeners out there, because they're really the ones that make it happen.
Indeed.
Because if it wasn't for them, we'd just be talking to each other.
Exactly, which wouldn't last long. We'd be like, let's go get some people to talk to.
Exactly. Anything you want to leave the audience with?
I just wanted to say to everyone, wholeness and balance. And that's, I think I said enough pretty much during this conversation. I want to let everyone know that solutions came before the problems here on a binary universe. They're always bolted together. So all of what I'm explaining to people, there's the other side to it. If they took it as positive, then there's, of course, the negative pole. And if they took it as negative, then there's the positive pole. And the key to all this, and I'll just quote Dynamo Jack here in the end, is he said you have to learn how to compress the two forces together. The negative, which is position right where the anus is, and then the positive, which is positioned right where your navel is. In cultivating these two forces and pressing them together, it created a phenomenal energy within the being and allowed them to handle much of any problem that they would encounter on 3D.
Excellent. We appreciate your time. Have a great evening.
Okay, Chris, wholeness.